Imagine for a second that you are aboard a 300-meter-long steel giant, floating in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, hundreds of kilometers from the nearest coast, when suddenly all the lights go out. The constant hum of the engines falls completely silent, and you realize that something absolutely catastrophic has just happened because this colossus that seemed invincible is now completely dead. In the water, without a single system functioning. The first thing you need to understand is that a ship of this size was never made to stand still. It was designed to be in constant motion, always moving forward, always under control. And when all the power disappears, when the main generators fail simultaneously, when the backup systems also fail to respond, you are not just dealing with a common blackout. You are facing one of the most dangerous situations that can happen at sea. Because this ship has now become a gigantic and defenseless structure, completely at the mercy of the forces of nature. And what many people don't realize is that in the first few seconds after the total loss of power, the crew enters an extremely specific emergency protocol, where every second literally counts. It's important to note that without electricity, there's no control over the rudder, no propulsion, no working pumps, no communication system with the outside world. And the ship immediately begins to drift, moving according to ocean currents and winds, transforming into a colossal floating object that can go in any direction. And here's something that will surprise you. A ship of this size, when it loses all power, begins to rotate sideways in relation to the waves in a matter of minutes, because it no longer has stabilizers working, no propellers correcting its position. And when a ship becomes perpendicular to the waves, when it's sideways to the sea, then you have a monumental problem, because the waves begin to hit it laterally, creating an increasingly intense and increasingly dangerous rocking motion. But wait, because the situation is even more complex than it seems, and you need to understand what's happening behind the scenes, inside the bowels of this steel giant. Because when the power goes out, all the bilge pumps stop working instantly, and any small leaks that existed, any water seepage that was constantly being removed by the automatic pumps, now begins to accumulate, slowly but inexorably. And this means that the ship can start taking on water, without anyone being able to pump it out. And the more water enters, the heavier it becomes. The lower it sinks to the waterline, the more unstable it becomes. And while this is happening, the internal temperature begins to change drastically. Because there is no more air conditioning working, there are no fans, there is no air circulation, and in certain parts of the ship, especially in the engine room, which is still hot from the residual heat of the engines, the temperature can rise to unbearable levels, while in other areas, especially if it is night or if the ship is in cold water, the temperature can drop rapidly. And the crew now needs to manage all this manually, in the dark, using flashlights, trying to assess damage, trying to figure out what caused the failure, trying to activate emergency generators that stubbornly refuse to work. And you need to understand that on a modern ship, practically everything depends on electricity, even the watertight doors, those safety doors that should isolate different compartments in case of flooding. Many of them are electrically operated, and without power, they may not close properly, which means that if water starts entering one compartment, it can spread to other compartments much more easily than it should. And there's more, because things get truly critical when you realize that without power, there's no communication with the outside world. The radios don't work, the GPS system doesn't work, the navigation equipment is all dead, and the ship can't send a distress signal, can't inform maritime authorities of its position, can't ask for help, and is literally invisible to the rest of the world, floating somewhere in the middle of the ocean. And the only way to communicate would be by activating an EPIRB, an emergency locator beacon that runs on an independent battery. Bot ABIN 10, this signal only says there's an emergency and transmits the position. It doesn't allow voice communication, doesn't allow the crew to explain the situation, doesn't allow proper rescue coordination. And meanwhile, the ship continues drifting, possibly towards busy shipping lanes where it becomes a colossal danger to other ships. Or worse, towards the coast, towards shallow waters, towards reefs or rocks where it could run aground catastrophically. And the crew has no way of knowing exactly where they are going because they can't read electronic nautical charts. They can't check instruments. They can't accurately calculate, drift. They are essentially navigating blindly, relying on paper charts if they can find them and read them with weak flashlights, and trying to estimate their position by observing the stars if it is night and the sky is clear, using navigation techniques that date back centuries, techniques that most modern crews have practiced very little because they have always relied on technology. Now let me tell you something that is perhaps the most distressing aspect of this whole situation, and that is the psychological factor, because the passengers, if there are any passengers on board, don't understand the true gravity of the situation. They are in literal and figurative darkness. They feel the ship rocking more and more. They hear water hitting the hull. They realize that something is deeply wrong, but they don't know exactly what, and they begin to panic. Managing hundreds or thousands of terrified people without a functioning loudspeaker system, without internal communication, without adequate emergency lights, becomes a logistical nightmare, because you need to go from cabin to cabin, from corridor to corridor, literally shouting instructions, trying to keep people calm, trying to prevent them from running aimlessly and getting hurt, trying to ensure they understand that they need to put on life jackets, that they need to go to the emergency meeting points. But all this in almost total darkness, with only a few emergency flashlights and the dim light that might be coming through the windows if it's daytime. And with each passing minute, the panic increases. People start screaming. Some are crying. Others are paralyzed with fear. And the crew must simultaneously act as engineers trying to fix the electrical system, sailors trying to assess the sea conditions, navigators trying to figure out where they are, and also psychologists and peacemakers trying to prevent total chaos among the passengers. And while all this is happening, there's an absolutely desperate race against time going on in the engine room, where engineers are working feverishly, trying to figure out what caused the complete failure. And here's the really scary part. In many cases, total power loss on a modern ship happens due to a cascade of failures. It's not just one thing that broke. It's a sequence of systems that failed one after another. Maybe the main generator failed due to a problem with contaminated fuel, and when they tried to activate the auxiliary generator, they found that it also didn't work due to a previous maintenance failure that went undetected. And when they tried to activate the emergency generator, they found that the batteries that should start it were discharged or faulty. And suddenly you have 3 layers of redundancy, 3 backup systems that should ensure this never happens, and they all failed simultaneously. And now the engineers are in the dark, literally, trying to diagnose complex problems without access. 2 diagnostic computers, without access to digital control panels, having to do everything manually, checking systems one by one. And every passing minute is a 1 more minute that the ship drifts. 1 more minute that it may be approaching danger. 1 more minute that the situation may deteriorate in unpredictable ways. And there's a crucial technical detail that most people don't know, and it's about the rudder. Because even when you finally manage to restart a generator and restore partial power to the ship, the rudder doesn't respond immediately. There's a whole hydraulic system that needs to be there are valves that need to be opened manually. There are procedures that need to be followed in a specific sequence, and this can take 20, 30 minutes or more. And during that time, the ship remains unsteerable, continues going in the direction that the currents and winds dictate. And if, during this critical period, the ship is approaching shallow waters, if it's approaching other ships, if it's in a situation where immediate control is necessary, there's simply no control available. No matter how hard the crew tries, no matter how much they need to, the ship is a colossal mass of metal that cannot be controlled, that cannot be stopped, that cannot be turned. And this feeling of absolute powerlessness, of having a disaster unfolding in slow motion before your eyes and being unable to do absolutely anything to stop it, that's something that haunts even experienced sailors for the rest of their lives. And in some cases, when the loss of power happens in especially bad sea conditions, when there is a storm, when there are waves 10, 12, 15 meters high, the situation becomes not only dangerous, but potentially fatal, because a ship without power, without maneuverability, without functioning stabilizers, can be capsized by sufficiently large waves if they hit it at the wrong angle. And capsizing is a word that no sailor wants to hear, but it is a real possibility when you have a colossus of 300 meters, completely at the mercy of the raging sea. And now, at this crucial moment in the narrative, you need to understand that the end of this story can go in many completely different directions, depending on countless factors: the competence and training of the crew, how quickly they can diagnose and resolve the problem, sheer luck in determining exactly where in the ocean the failure occurred, the presence or absence of other nearby ships that could respond to a distress signal, weather conditions, the amount of time available before something catastrophic happens. And in some documented real cases, heroic crews managed to restore partial power in record time, stabilize the situation, make brilliant improvised repairs using nothing but basic tools and a deep understanding of how the systems work, and save ship and crew from certain disaster. While in other cases, despite all efforts, despite all competence, despite doing everything right, the combination of adverse factors led to tragic outcomes. And the truth is that each of these incidents teaches vital lessons for the maritime industry, leads to changes in safety protocols, leads to improvements in the design of backup systems, leads to more rigorous crew training, because the sea is not forgive mistakes. The sea doesn't give second chances. And when you're aboard a 300-meter giant that has lost all its power in the middle of the ocean, you're experiencing one of the most primally terrifying situations a modern human being can face. You're suddenly completely disconnected from civilization, completely dependent on basic skills and luck, fully aware that your fate is being decided by forces far greater than yourself. And that's an experience that fundamentally changes how you see the world, how you see the technology we trust so blindly, how you see the fragility of human existence when confronted with the raw power of nature. And if this story left you with your heart racing, if you were imagining how you would react in that situation, if you're curious about all the technical details that I couldn't fully cover here, then you definitely need to like this video right now, because this kind of detailed and intense content only continues to be produced when you show that you want more. And leave a comment telling me which aspect of this situation scared you the most. Was it the possibility of capsize? The idea of being completely isolated and invisible in the middle of the ocean, the passengers' panic, the engineers' race against time? Tell me below, because I really want to know what impacted you most in this story. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, seriously, hit that subscribe button now, because I regularly post about extreme situations, about what happens when everything goes wrong, about the behind the scenes of events that most people never consider, and you definitely don't want to miss the next videos. And speaking of that, there's another absolutely fascinating video appearing on your screen right now that will take you on a completely different but equally intense journey of discovery that will keep you glued from beginning to end. So click on it now and continue discovering more mind-blowing curiosities.